Is there another God in the Bible? The hidden truth that challenges everything shadows stretch across the scriptures, concealing a truth too dangerous to confront. For generations, one belief has stood as the foundation of faith. There is only one God, the eternal, the creator of all existence. But buried beneath the ancient texts lies a haunting question. Is he truly alone? In Genesis, a quiet contradiction emerges. Let us make man in our image. Who was God speaking to? If he is the singular, divine being, why does he speak in the plural? Some dismiss it as poetic language or a heavenly counsel. But what if the explanation is far more disturbing? Throughout Scripture, subtle traces of another presence appear, a second divine figure hidden in plain sight, a figure whose existence would rewrite the very foundation of our faith. If he is real, then what does that mean for everything we've believed? And the most unsettling question of all, have we been worshiping the wrong God this entire time? The mysterious words of God. From the opening lines of Genesis, a quiet disturbance lingers beneath the surface of Scripture, a riddle so faint yet so profound that most pass over it without notice. But for those willing to look beyond the familiar, an unsettling question begins to emerge. Let us make man in our image after our likeness. Genesis 1:26. Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil. Genesis 3:22. Come, let us go down and confuse their language. Genesis 11:7. Who is God speaking to? If he is the one true creator, why does he speak as if he's not alone? For centuries, theologians have proposed explanations, royal language, angelic hosts, or even the prelude to the Trinity. But none of these answers seem to resolve the deeper tension hidden within the text. In a book founded on strict monotheism, these passages feel like cracks in the foundation, whispers of a forgotten reality. And disturbingly, they are not the only ones. Mysterious figure in the Old Testament. Throughout the Old Testament, a perplexing figure emerges, one who speaks with the authority of God, acts with divine power, yet is somehow distinct from the Almighty himself. This being appears in burning flames, wrestles with men, and delivers judgment in the name of the Most High. But this is no ordinary angel. When he reveals himself, those who encounter him tremble with fear and reverence, convinced they have stood face to face with God. And yet, Scripture presents him as a separate entity, a paradox that challenges the very foundation of monotheism. Take the encounter at the burning bush. Exodus states, "The angel of the Lord appeared to him in flames of fire from within a bush." Exodus 3:2. But as the conversation unfolds, the speaker is no mere angel. It is God himself. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Exodus 3:6. Moses hides his face in terror, believing he has seen God. But how can an angel claim the identity of the Almighty? How can a divine messenger speak not on behalf of God, but as God? This pattern repeats across Scripture. The angel of the Lord speaks to Abraham, Hagar, Gideon, and Samson's parents, not with the humility of a servant, but with the authority of the Creator himself, an encounter too dangerous to survive. Even more unsettling is how people react when they encounter him. In Judges 13:22, after seeing the angel of the Lord, Manoah and his wife cry out in terror, "We have seen God," convinced that death is now inevitable. But how could they have seen God and survived when Scripture clearly states that no one can see his face and live? There is something deeply disturbing hidden beneath these encounters. If this being is not merely an angel, then what is he? Some have suggested he is a pre-incarnate form of Christ. Others believe he is a manifestation of God's presence. But there is another, more unsettling possibility, one that challenges the very foundation of monotheism. Could it be that there is another divine figure concealed within the ancient texts, a being distinct from the Father, yet carrying the full essence of divinity? And if that is true, what does it mean for everything we've been taught to believe? The second divine presence. If the angel of the Lord were merely a messenger, the explanation would be simple. But Scripture resists simple answers. Time and again, this figure steps beyond the role of a servant, into the realm of divinity itself. In Genesis 22, Abraham stands on the brink of sacrificing his son Isaac when the angel of the Lord calls out from heaven, "Do not lay a hand on the boy." But what follows is even more perplexing. This figure doesn't just deliver a message from God. He speaks as if he is God. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Genesis 22:12. To whom was Isaac truly being offered? God or this mysterious being? Why does he claim personal ownership over a sacrifice meant only for the Almighty? The same pattern emerges in Exodus 23, where God promises to send a figure to lead Israel through the wilderness. Behold, I send an angel before you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. But this is no ordinary angel. God gives a chilling warning. Pay careful attention to him and obey his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not forgive your transgressions, for my name is in him. Exodus 23:21. Who is this being, carrying the very name and authority of God, and why does he hold the power to forgive, or refuse to forgive, sins? A divine authority beyond explanation, an angel with the authority to forgive sins, an angel who carries the very name of God within himself. This defies the very framework of Scripture. The prophets are clear. Only God can forgive sins, and his name is not shared with another. And yet, here stands a figure who speaks as God, acts as God, and is worshipped as God, but is somehow not God the Father. This mystery deepens in the prophetic writings. In Zechariah 3, a vision unfolds where Joshua the high priest stands accused by Satan. But it is not God the Father who steps in as judge. It is the angel of the Lord. I have taken away your iniquity, he declares, a statement of divine authority that belongs to God alone. Zechariah 3:4. The implications are staggering. This figure is not a mere servant or messenger. He holds the power of heaven itself. He commands, he forgives, he stands in judgment. But if Scripture is clear that there is only one God, then who is this being, and how can he possess the authority reserved for the Almighty? A hidden truth within the Scriptures. Some have suggested that this divine presence is the pre-incarnate Christ, a glimpse of Jesus before his earthly birth. This theory resonates with certain Christian interpretations, but the Hebrew Scriptures never explicitly identify him as such. Instead, he exists in a space of both revelation and mystery, wielding divine authority, yet never fully unveiled. But there is another, far more unsettling possibility. Could it be that the traditional view of God as a singular entity is only part of the story? That the earliest Scriptures hinted at a deeper, more complex understanding of divinity, an understanding that was later shaped, simplified, and redefined? If the angel of the Lord is not simply a messenger, but a separate divine being in his own right, we are confronted with a question that challenges the very heart of monotheism. Is it possible that, hidden within the sacred texts of the Bible, there has always been more than one God, El Shaddai, or One-Abu-H? Have we misunderstood? From the very beginning, God has been known by many names: El Shaddai, Elohim, Yahweh, Adonai, each one carrying its own weight, authority, and mystery. Most believe these names simply represent different aspects of the same divine being, but Scripture suggests a far more unsettling possibility. What if these names were not interchangeable? What if they pointed to something much deeper, something hidden within the fabric of our faith? In Exodus 6:3, a verse that shakes the very foundation of our understanding, God speaks to Moses and declares, I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai, but by my name Yahweh. I did not make myself fully known to them. This statement is striking. If El Shaddai and Yahweh are truly the same, why would one remain concealed from the patriarchs? Why would the God who established a covenant with Abraham not reveal his full name until the time of Moses? A different divine presence? The implications are staggering. For generations, the patriarchs of faith may have been worshiping a different divine presence altogether. The mystery deepens further in Deuteronomy 32:8, a verse that has sparked debate for centuries. It states, when the Most High, Elion, gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided mankind, he set up the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the sons of God. Here, Elion, the Most High, is portrayed as separate from Yahweh, as though Yahweh is merely one of many divine beings assigned to oversee a portion of humanity. If Yahweh was always the one true God, why is he depicted as a figure who receives dominion rather than one who grants it? The Dead Sea Scrolls shed light on this issue, confirming that early texts used sons of God instead of sons of Israel, implying a divine council where various gods ruled over different nations. And this is far from an isolated passage. In Psalm 82:1, another unsettling scene unfolds. God stands in the divine assembly. He judges among the gods. A divine hierarchy or something more? The passage suggests a hierarchy of divine beings, with Yahweh reigning among them. But this raises a troubling question. If there is only one God, then who are the others? Were they merely angels, or is there something more at play? Traditional theology offers a common explanation. Many scholars argue that these names and descriptions do not point to multiple gods, but rather to the progressive revelation of the same divine being. El Shaddai, Elyon, and Yahweh could simply represent different ways in which God revealed himself over time, rather than being separate deities. According to monotheistic interpretations, the divine council could be understood as a heavenly court of angels, not rival gods. Yet, if this is true, why does Yahweh insist on exclusive worship in the Ten Commandments? Why does he declare, "You shall have no other gods before me"? Exodus 20:3, rather than simply stating, "There are no other gods"? The answer may lie in the evolution of faith itself. Ancient religions often depicted a supreme deity ruling over lesser gods, each governing different realms or nations. Could it be that the concept of Yahweh was once understood as one among many, only to be reshaped into monotheism over time? If so, who made this change, and why? The transformation of faith. Some scholars propose that this transformation was intentional. As Israel's faith developed, so too did its understanding of theology. What once may have been a divine assembly, a council of gods, was gradually reinterpreted, rewritten, and reshaped to fit the rising belief in a singular, all-powerful ruler. The divine hierarchy was collapsed into one. The other figures were erased, and the complexity of God was simplified for easier understanding and worship. But if Yahweh was once among many, what became of the others? Were they abandoned, cast aside, or defeated in a cosmic struggle? Or, more unsettlingly, are they still present, lurking in the shadows of Scripture, waiting to be uncovered? The hidden war of the gods. If Yahweh was once part of a larger divine council, what happened to the others? Were they erased, forgotten by history, or was there something far darker at play? Was there a war, an ancient battle between these divine beings that ultimately reshaped the very foundation of faith as we know it? The Bible offers subtle hints of a time when the heavens were not ruled by a single God, but by a divine assembly, a gathering of mighty beings, each holding authority over different nations, realms, and destinies. The rise of Yahweh's supremacy, Deuteronomy 32:8, describes how Elyon, the Most High, divided the nations among the sons of God, granting each their own dominion. Yahweh was allotted Israel, while other gods ruled over different lands and peoples. But as history unfolded, something significant shifted. A consolidation of power took place. The gods who once held authority over nations were gradually cast into shadow. Yahweh rose above them all, claiming ultimate supremacy and demanding exclusive worship. "You shall have no other gods before me." Exodus 20:3. This was not a denial of their existence. It was a declaration of dominance. The phrasing is deliberate. "No other gods before me" suggests the existence of other gods, but demands their rejection, their silencing, their removal from the minds and hearts of the people. Throughout the Old Testament, Yahweh issues warnings against these rival deities: Baal, Molech, Asherah, names once revered, now reduced to false idols, unworthy of worship. The exile of the gods. But what if these beings were not simply idols? What if they were once powerful rulers, now dethroned and cast aside? What if, instead of being destroyed, some of them chose exile rather than extinction? The Book of Psalms offers another unsettling glimpse into this hidden conflict. Psalm 82 presents Yahweh standing in the assembly of the gods, but he is not a fellow member. He is their judge. "How long will you judge unjustly and show partiality to the wicked?" Psalm 82:2. This is no mere reprimand. It's a rebuke, a direct condemnation. Yahweh is not simply a participant in this divine council. He is seizing control of it. Then Yahweh delivers his final decree. "I said, you are gods, sons of the Most High, but you will die like mere men. You will fall like every other ruler." Psalm 82:6-7. This is a declaration of war. Yahweh is stripping the divine council of its power, condemning them to perish like mortal rulers. The gods of old, once the rulers of nations, are being overthrown, cast down to their end. The battle that never ended. This cosmic war unfolds throughout the Old Testament. Over and over, Yahweh's followers are commanded to tear down altars, destroy temples, and eradicate entire cultures that worship these rival deities. The conflict is not just spiritual, it is physical, political, and total in its scope. But what if the war was never truly won? Ancient texts beyond the Bible suggest a darker possibility. Some gods were slain outright. Others, like the fallen angels described in the Book of Enoch, were bound in chains and imprisoned deep within the earth, awaiting their final judgment. Yet, what if some gods still walk the earth, disguised and hidden, their influence still lurking in the shadows of history, their power diminished, but not gone, their influence lessened, but not forgotten? And here arises the most terrifying question of all. If Yahweh defeated the old gods to reign supreme, was he the true ruler all along, or did he simply win the war? If these ancient gods are not truly gone, could they be waiting, watching, and when the time is right, will they rise again? The forbidden truth. Who hid it, and why? If Yahweh's rise to supremacy was the result of a divine war, then why is this history concealed? Why does the Bible remain silent about this celestial conflict? The answer is as unsettling as it is unavoidable. Someone rewrote the story. Scripture, as we have it today, is not a single unchanged text. It is a collection of writings, edited, altered, and compiled over centuries, shaped by those who held the power to define what was sacred and what was heretical. The earliest Israelites lived in a world where gods and spirits were not abstract ideas, but real, tangible forces. They didn't deny the existence of other deities. Instead, they feared them, fought them, and at times even worshipped them. But as Israel's identity solidified, so did its theology. What was once a divine council of many gods was reshaped into a singular throne. The competing gods of old were recast as demons, deceivers, and shadows of a world Yahweh had conquered. Their names were erased, their followers condemned, their temples reduced to rubble. But fragments remain. In the book of Jeremiah 7:18, the prophet condemns Israel for honoring the Queen of Heaven, a deity once widely worshipped. In Judges 2:13, the Israelites are rebuked for turning to Baal and Asherah. These were not mere idols. They were once regarded as real, active deities, powerful and revered throughout the region. Even Yahweh himself, in ancient Israelite belief, was once worshipped alongside a divine consort, a belief that was later purged from the religious narrative. Traditional scholars argue that these shifts in theology weren't deliberate erasures, but rather divinely orchestrated revelations, a progressive unfolding of truth. They assert that Yahweh's rise to absolute monotheism was not about eliminating other gods, but about revealing that he alone was the one true God all along. According to Jewish and Christian interpretations, this transformation was not a rewrite of history, but rather a correction of human misunderstanding. However, if this is true, why does history present a different picture? Why do ancient, often overlooked texts still hint at a lost reality, one where Yahweh was not the only God? The answer may lie in exile. When the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem in 586 BCE, the Israelites were forced into captivity, losing their temple, their identity, and their homeland. During this crisis, the priests and scribes began to reconstruct their faith, redefining Yahweh not as one God among many, but as the only God who had ever existed. It was no longer enough for Yahweh to be supreme. He had to be alone. The old histories were rewritten. The rival gods were transformed into mere idols, powerless and false. The divine council that once stood was consolidated into a singular, omnipotent being. The war of the gods was erased. The conqueror was made eternal. But history has a way of resurfacing. Forgotten texts are uncovered, ancient myths are revived, and scholars begin to piece together what was lost. Perhaps the gods of old were not destroyed, only silenced. Perhaps their influence, buried beneath layers of rewritten doctrine, never truly vanished. And if that is true, then the world may not be as it seems. The past was reshaped. The future remains unwritten. And the question remains, if history can be rewritten once, can it be rewritten again? The truth that changes everything, the whispers of forgotten gods, the buried remnants of a divine war, the uneasy truth that Yahweh may not have always been alone. All of it leads to one inevitable question. What happens if the veil is lifted? For centuries, faith has been built upon a singular foundation. One God, one truth, one ultimate power. But if history was rewritten, if the gods of old were silenced, then what does that mean for us now? Have we been worshiping a victor rather than a creator? Have we unknowingly followed the last surviving ruler of a war we were never meant to remember? There is one final clue, one hidden in plain sight. Revelation 22:12 and 13. Behold, I am coming soon, bringing my recompense with me, to repay each one for what he has done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last, the beginning and the end. A declaration of supremacy, a final claim to absolute power. But what if it is not a promise, but a warning? What if he is not returning to bring peace, but to ensure that no others remain? The prophecies of the end times speak of a great conflict, an ultimate battle, between forces beyond human comprehension. For those who believe, it is the final victory of light over darkness. But what if it is something else? What if it is the last war, a war to erase any remnants of the old order, to eliminate every last trace of the gods who were once revered, to finish what was started thousands of years ago? What if the gods who were cast down have never been truly gone? The world is changing. Secrets long buried are rising to the surface. Lost texts resurface. Heretical writings gain new interest, and ancient names once feared begin to be spoken again. The concept of one supreme being is being challenged, not by skeptics, but by history itself. And if the war is not over, then what happens when the other side fights back?